Hello, I'm John McBride. Welcome to my 5 Great Walks of Japan. Today I briefly introduce what I consider to be the 5 Great Walks of Japan, and I'll introduce the 5 or 6 works of great classical literature I have used to research each of these walks. So these are the types of early modern guidebooks I've delighted in reading, transcribing, and translating. This one is the entire guide to the Tokaido. About 30% of the books are illustrated, beautifully woodblock printed. Of course, Mount Fuji features for the Tokaido. So allow me to share my screen. So the 5 walks are the Tokaido, the Nakasendo, the narrow road to the deep north, the Kumano Kodo Pilgrimage, and the Shikoku 88 Temples Pilgrimage. First, the Tokaido, which is the main highway that linked Kyoto and Edo, today's Tokyo. It hugs the Pacific Ocean side of Japan, and it dates back to about the 8th century and is 492 kilometers long. In the 18th century, it took 16 days to walk from Edo to Kyoto. I walked it for the first time in March 1980 from Tokyo to Kyoto in 16 days. The book I have transcribed and translated is the Tokaido Meishōzue, the illustrated guide to principal sites of the Tokaido, published in 1797. It was a great hit and was used by people who were planning to walk the Tokaido, as well as being popular with armchair travel enthusiasts. Here we see a busy shopping street near Nihonbashi in Edo and a woodblock print store. Before long, the guidebook brings us to our first post town, the first of 52 post towns, Shinagawa, which was famous for nori production. Good sections of the Tokaido remain for walking, including an excellent section over the Hakone mountain pass. The Tokaido is all about views of Mount Fuji, and one of them is from the Satta Pass near the little post town of Okitsu. Satta Pass was made famous in Utagawa Hiroshige's woodblock print series, the 52 stations of the Tokaido. I used these woodblock prints in 1980 to photograph their approximate locations. Small post towns survive. This one is the intermediate post town of Utsunoya, just before the Tokaido enters the tea plantations of Shizuoka. And before long, we arrive at the Akasaka post town, which has an Edo period inn called the Ohashiya, where I stayed many times. Unfortunately, it closed recently and is reopened as a museum. Arimatsu Post Town is a little further along the highway, and it's still famous for indigo tie-dyeing. In Hiroshige's woodblock print, we see a tie-dyeing cloth shop on the left, and you can still buy similar products in stores today. And in the Tokaido Illustrated Guide, you can see women in the shop there tying the cloth ready for dyeing. And on the far right side there, you see dyed cloth, which is being dried outside. Both the Tokaido and the Nakasendo terminate at Kyoto's Sanjo Ohashi Bridge. Our illustrated guide does not show us an image of the bridge. Rather, the last image is of Lake Biwa and the grave of the father of haiku poetry, Matsuo Basho, whose walk we'll introduce shortly. The grave survives today, much as we see in the illustrated guide. The next walk is the Nakasendo. The Nakasendo also links Tokyo with Kyoto, this time through the central mountains of Japan. The Tokaido was 3 days quicker than the Nakasendo, but crossed many challenging rivers and 2 open sea crossings. So women in particular preferred the Nakasendo, and it was sometimes referred to as the Princess Highway for this reason and for other reasons. It is 534 kilometers long and would take 19 days to walk in the Edo period. The central section of the Nakasendo is the famous part, and everyone wants to walk on the Nakasendo today, through the Kiso Valley. It's particularly well preserved and has delightful post towns with inns that look much as they did in the Edo period: Magome post town, Tsumago, and Narai. The guide I used was Jippensha Ikku's Continuing Tales of Shanks Mare, published in 23 volumes in between 1810 and 1822. Ikku was already famous for his Shanks Mare, which is available in English translation. The two protagonists make their way down the Tokaido, but they return on the Nakasendo and continue to get up to all sorts of mischief. Places to eat are introduced in the guide, and some of them survive today. This is the Echizenya Soba Noodle Store, which survives in Agematsu Post Town. And this is the Bamba Post Town, a bit closer to Lake Biwa, as depicted by Utagawa Hiroshige in the series 69 Stations of the Kiso Road. Our protagonists, Yaji and Kita, on this evening were invited to a tea ceremony in Bamba. They had no idea what they were doing. They had been mistaken by their host for cultured gentlemen, but they were in fact just ruffians from Edo. Their host invited an old quack to the tea ceremony, and Yaji and Kita decided they would just watch what the doctor did and copy him. But as they watched the old man, they noticed his runny nose was actually running into the tea bowl. And when they picked up the shared bowl, they moved it in all sorts of directions. In the real tea ceremony, a guest must respectfully turn the tea bowl twice to the side to avoid drinking from the front of the bowl. Their host was so impressed, thinking that their movements were the latest tea ceremony fashion, straight from the great city of Edo. But in fact, all they were doing was trying to avoid the snot in the tea bowl. So they get up to all sorts of exploits. The next walk is following in the footsteps of the father of haiku poetry, Matsuo Basho. He described beautifully his walk of 1689 in his masterpiece, The Narrow Road to the Deep North. The walk is in the northeast of Japan and is 2,400 kilometers long, and took Basho 5 months to walk with his companion and disciple, Sora. Many people have translated Basho's writings, and the best is by Penguin Classics. But I sometimes call upon a soba noodle shop deep in the mountains whose family happens to own the original book. It should really be in a fireproof library, but there is something special about visiting the family which has owned Basho's original book for centuries. As I mentioned, everyone has translated Basho's book, as have I. My contribution to the field is the first and only translation available of Sora's diary. Sora was Basho's disciple, 5 years younger than him. He arranged all the detail of the 5-month walk, arranging for passports to get them through checkpoints, paying for inns, arranging horses and ferries. And I love the detail of this most important walk. The walk is in the northeast of Japan and is delightful in autumn. And I'm very proud that the walk I designed was voted the 4th best walk in the world by CNN Travel in 2023. Next is the Kumano Kodo Pilgrimage. This is a 755-kilometer walk from Kyoto around 4 routes to the sacred area of Kumano, which is located on the Kii Peninsula south of Osaka. I've used 2 major literary works. The first is the illustrated biography of the holy man Ippen. His disciple Shoan produced 12 scrolls about the life of Ippen. In scroll 2, he visits Koyasan, the center of esoteric Buddhism. Now, many walkers on the Kumano Kodo will start their walk here. Scroll 2 says that he visited Tennoji in Osaka, and then Ippen walked up to Koyasan. He sees this Mie door in the center here, where an image of Kobo Daishi, the founder of esoteric Buddhism in Japan, is consecrated, and the hall looks much the same today, as does the main stupa of the Koya Garan. And of course, Ippen visited the mausoleum of Kobo Daishi. Note that before undertaking a Shikoku 88 Temples pilgrimage, one should also visit Koya-san to pay one's respects to Kobo Daishi. Scroll 3 is where a detailed description of Ippen's visit to Kumano is documented. The year was 1274. During the Kamakura period, Ippen was 36 years of age, and he traveled in a group of 4. The scroll describes their journey by boat down the Kumano River. This illustration is the only way we know how this journey was undertaken in the 13th century, and it's replicated today. This part of the pilgrimage by boat is unique and is included in UNESCO's World Heritage Listing, the only water-based pilgrimage with a heritage listing in the world. Kumano also boasts the only heritage-listed hot spring bathtub in the world, so you must visit Yunomine Onsen. Ippen visited the Hayatama Grand Shrine in Shingu, and the physical manifestation of the Hayatama deity, Kotobiki Iwa Rock, is included in the scroll and can be visited today, as can the Hayatama Shrine itself. Ippen visits the third grand shrine of Kumano at Nachi, the Japan's tallest waterfall. And the shrine is exactly as we see today. And the Daimon-zaka approach path is still, I think, the best way to approach the shrine. Finally, the scroll shows how Ippen met with the Kumano Gongen, or Kumano deity in the mountains. A line of pilgrims fills the trail behind them. And this sense of wonder is still available, achievable in the mountains of Kii Peninsula. With this sense of wonderment, Ippen visits the Hongu Grand Shrine on an island in the Kumano River. The main shrine has been moved to safer ground now after a typhoon flooded the island at the end of the 19th century. A torii gate marks the location of the island. And one can see people getting on boats for the descent down the Kumano River in the scroll. A second document I have translated is the illustrated guide to the Saigoku Kannon pilgrimage, which is an amazing illustrated description of the Iseji approach path to Kumano. So please look out for my YouTube description of this walk. And our final great walk is the Shikoku 88 Temples pilgrimage, a journey of 1,200 kilometers around the island of Shikoku. I undertook my first pilgrimage in 1981, not taking any money with me and begging for alms along the way. I did lose a lot of weight. The book I used and translated was the Shikoku Henro Michi Shirube. This was a best-selling guidebook published in 1687 and popular for about 200 years. It was written by the priest Shinnen. He was responsible for establishing the route with his carved stone guideposts, and his guide also establishes which temples were included in the official 88. 37 of the 200 Shinnen guideposts survive today, and his illustrations reflect what pilgrims look like today. His guidebook provides an illustration of each of the deities of the 88 temples, and even suggests where cheap accommodation is available for pilgrims. Shikoku is a delight to walk. So thank you. Please look out for my descriptions on YouTube of the walks, and always a subscribe and a thumbs up is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.